My mother called Harvard pretending I was a credit card thief to destroy my future. So I cut her off and built a life without her. Years later, she lost everything trying to destroy me again, and now she needs my help. My mom once actually called Harvard and told them I was a credit card thief, just to wreck my future. After that, I cut her off completely and started building a life that didn't include her. But years down the road, after trying to take me down again, she ended up losing everything, and now she's the one asking for help. She's always been the brainiac of the family, 3 degrees and a PhD, all from big-name Ivy League schools. Anytime I brought home an award or academic honor, she'd brag about it like it was her own achievement. She'd go on, telling everyone it was all thanks to her. That was just her thing, like she couldn't let go of the spotlight from her own glory days. And honestly, I wasn't trying to take that from her. So when she insisted on reviewing all my college essays before I submitted them, I let her do it. I mean, she was the reason my GPA had climbed all the way up to 4.2. But then something weird started happening. Not a single college accepted me. Even stranger? I never got any standard rejection letters. What I did get were angry ones. Some were flat out threatening. Harvard's letter straight up called my essay disgraceful. Brown even warned they might blacklist me from other universities. That's when I started noticing something didn't add up. Each time I was rejected, I'd catch this strange glint in my mom's eye, like she'd seen it coming, or worse, wanted it to happen. There was only one school I truly had my heart set on, University of North Carolina at Charlotte. I never told her about it. It wasn't Ivy League, and I didn't want to deal with her making me feel like a failure again. But then something unexpected happened. I landed an interview just 2 weeks after I sent in my application. They told me I was exactly the kind of student they were looking for. That night, I did something crazy. I told my mom. Even after everything, a part of me hoped she'd be thrilled, maybe even crack a smile or give me a hug. But nope. All she said was, "That's wonderful, sweetie. But don't get too excited. You don't want to be disappointed." I just stood there, staring at her. And that's the first time I really wondered, did my mom even want what was best for me? But then I reminded myself of all the hours she spent drilling me on schoolwork. My grades were sky high because of her. So I did what she always told me to do. I called myself ungrateful and kept moving. But after a week, I finally snapped. UNC Charlotte had said I was their ideal candidate. Then, a week later, I got their decision email. Plain red Arial font. Just one word, rejected. It was the harshest rejection I'd ever seen. They didn't even mention my grades. Instead, they went after my poor character. But deep down, I wasn't confused. I knew my mom had something to do with it. So that was the last time I told her anything. I found this small college 3 states away that she'd never even heard of. I applied behind her back. Got accepted. Packed up my car the day after graduation and hit the road while she was off at her precious book club. For the first couple weeks, she called every day. I never answered. She always left these fake sweet voicemails. One was 5 minutes long, calling me an embarrassment to the family. Another said I was destroying everything she'd worked for. My personal favorite? The one where she predicted I'd end up stuck in a dead-end job by 30 and die alone. I mean, Mom, isn't that kind of your life? LOL. Anyway, I blocked her after that. Most of the family took my side, thankfully. Fast forward 5 years, and now I'm a paralegal pulling in great money, with an even better job lined up. I was cracking a joke with my coworker one afternoon about how we both thought we'd never get into college. Then she suddenly asked what my GPA had been. I said 4.2. 4.2? What? She shouted. How the hell did you struggle to get into school? Before I could even explain, she grabbed her phone. My dad's a college admissions officer, she said. Sorry, but I need answers. I just grinned. Jenna was always kind of a quirky soul. Daddy, do you know a Zephyrine counter? She asked, tossing my name out there. At that point, I was practically falling out of my chair laughing, swatting at her phone, trying to make her stop. But when he answered, I froze. From 2019? Harvard? Jenna was grinning. But I wasn't. Yes, Daddy, you still have a great memory, she said. Why didn't she get in? His reply hit like a truck. She's the one whose mom called. Apparently, the whole office had been buzzing about it for months afterward. And that's when the truth finally hit me like a punch to the gut. My mom had called up Harvard claiming I'd been stealing her credit cards and that I wasn't mentally stable. Her performance was so convincing, they red flagged my application right away, and then flagged my name in the National College database. I was furious. Every nerve in my body lit up with rage. That's when I decided she had to face consequences. I started collecting every bit of proof I could. Recreated a full timeline of the schools I'd applied to, the threatening emails I got, every single voicemail she left. I spent hours digging through old files, screenshots, recordings, anything I could use. My hands were literally trembling as I sorted it all into folders on my laptop. Then I reached out to some of my old high school teachers. They still remembered how strong my academic record was. Mrs. Ellis from AP Lit replied right away. She told me she always wondered why I didn't end up at one of the top universities. Mr. Rivera from Calc was floored when I shared what happened. Both of them offered to write statements backing me up. But as soon as word started spreading in the family about what I was doing, my mom caught wind of it. My cousin texted saying she was calling everyone, going full out trying to ruin my name. She told them I was having some kind of breakdown. That I was making up stories. That I needed psychiatric help. And then she escalated. She started creating fake social media accounts to harass my workplace. One morning, my boss pulled me aside. He looked concerned. Someone had been anonymously sending in tips about my so-called criminal background and claiming I had forged my paralegal credentials. It didn't stop there. Every accusation got worse than the last. I felt like everything I'd worked so hard for was collapsing. My boss told me he didn't believe the rumors, but HR still had to investigate. So I handed over every document I had, my transcripts, certificates, references, everything. The investigation dragged on for weeks, and the whole time, I kept showing up to work, trying to pretend everything was normal, while my career hung in the balance. Just when I thought everything had fallen apart, Jenna's dad stepped up. He wrote out a full statement, confirming that my mom had called Harvard and spelled out exactly what she said about me. And then something completely unexpected happened. Other admissions officers began coming forward with similar stories. They remembered getting those strange calls about me, wild accusations that didn't match up at all with my spotless academic record. Around that same time, I made another discovery that shook me to my core. I decided to swing by my old house one day while my mom was at work. I still had a key, and I figured I'd check the mailbox for any leftover documents, just to be sure. But once I got inside, I noticed something strange in the garage. Piles and piles of unopened mail, some of it dusty and yellowed with age. As I started sifting through it, my stomach dropped. There were scholarship offers from colleges that didn't use the national database. Acceptance letters from smaller schools I'd applied to on my own, without telling her. She'd been hiding my mail for years, intercepting everything that didn't fit her plan. I stood there, shaking with rage, taking photo after photo with trembling hands. How many chances had she taken from me? How many paths had she blocked before I even knew they were open? I gathered up what I could and got out of there before she came home. And after that, she started coming at me even harder. She went to the police and filed false reports, claiming I was stalking her. Said I'd been threatening her, harassing her. Next thing I knew, 2 officers were knocking on my door. But thankfully, my building had security cameras, and the footage proved I wasn't even in the same state during the times she claimed I was harassing her. The cops apologized for the hassle, but I could tell they were annoyed. They knew she was wasting their time. Things finally hit a boiling point when we were both ordered to attend a mediation session as part of a restraining order hearing. My mom showed up looking perfectly polished, acting sweet and fragile, playing the role of the helpless victim. But during the session, she slipped up. In one moment of anger, she accidentally admitted, on the record, that she had, in fact, made those calls to the colleges. She claimed she was just trying to protect the schools from her ungrateful daughter. I'll never forget the way the mediator's eyes popped wide open. Everything in that room was being recorded. And that recording? That became the nail in the coffin. I sat in my car afterward, playing that audio over and over. Her own words. Finally, solid proof that everything I'd said was true. And then my aunt reached out. She'd heard about the mediation session and told me something I never saw coming. Turns out, my mom had done the exact same thing to her, decades ago, sabotaging her med school applications out of jealousy. She said she'd always suspected it, but she never had evidence, until now. Suddenly, all of it made sense. My mom's toxic behavior wasn't just about me. It was a pattern that stretched back years, maybe even generations. She'd always found ways to tear down the women closest to her. Now that I had all the pieces, I went looking for a lawyer. I found one who took my case pro bono, someone who specialized in family law and emotional abuse. Together, we built a strong case for defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The day my mom got served with the papers, she launched into one last desperate move. She faked a heart condition. Seriously. Posted all over social media about her failing heart, and how the stress from her cruel, ungrateful daughter was unaliving her. But during discovery, we subpoenaed her medical records. Not a single thing was wrong with her. No diagnosis. No treatment. No prescriptions. It was just another lie, another performance to get sympathy. But this time, it didn't work. The court ruled in my favor. The judge ordered her to pay damages, and even more importantly, to send formal letters of retraction to every college she'd contacted. She had to admit what she did and clear my name. And since the judgment was public record, the news spread fast. Her academic reputation took a huge hit. The once revered professor with 3 degrees and a PhD, outed as someone who sabotaged her own daughter's education. Her colleagues started distancing themselves. Speaking gigs got cancelled. Even her beloved book club politely asked her not to come back. With the settlement money, I launched something I dreamed about for a while. A scholarship fund for students who'd been sabotaged by their own parents. I called it the Second Chance Scholarship. The very first recipient was a young woman whose father had hidden all her acceptance letters because he didn't want her to leave home. Reading her story brought tears to my eyes. I saw my younger self in her words. My mother, meanwhile, faced the consequences of her actions in isolation. The relatives she'd manipulated for years? They finally saw her for who she really was. Some of them even reached out to me to apologize, said they wished they'd believed me sooner. By that point, I'd been promoted to senior paralegal. My boss, the one who had my back during all the workplace drama, ended up becoming a close mentor and friend. And Jenna and I grew tighter too. We bonded even more over everything we'd both overcome. The scholarship fund kept growing each year. More donors, more students. Some of the stories they sent me were gut-wrenching, kids facing physical abuse just for applying to college, others manipulated with guilt and fear the same way I had been. Every letter reminded me why I'd turned my pain into purpose. My mom tried to reach out again, through lawyers, family members, even social media messages. But I kept my boundaries strong. She no longer had any control over my future. The woman who tried to keep me under her thumb forever couldn't even touch the life I'd built. She wanted me to fail. To come crawling back. To never rise above her. But I did. And I created something meaningful out of the ashes. The first anniversary of the scholarship fund was coming up, and I wanted to celebrate it right. We didn't need anything fancy. I rented a small conference room at the local community center, just a cozy space where donors could meet the recipients and hear their stories. Jenna helped set up chairs, her dad set up snacks, and everything was falling into place. Then, 20 minutes before it was supposed to start, I got a text from the building manager. The fire department had gotten an anonymous tip about safety code violations in our room. The entire wing had to be shut down for inspection. I knew exactly who made the call. But of course, I couldn't prove it. Still, we weren't going to let that ruin the night. We scrambled to move everything outside into the parking lot. Everyone pitched in, recipients hauled chairs, donors helped move tables. We set everything up under the soft glow of streetlights. And you know what? It turned out even better than I'd imagined. The outdoor setup made it feel real, raw, and personal. The students shared their stories under the stars, their voices rising up into the warm evening air. No walls, no ceilings, just truth, resilience, and connection. And right in the middle of that peaceful night, my phone rang again. It was my landlord. He sounded tense. Said he needed to talk to me about something urgent. Then came another blow, this time from my landlord. He called me one morning, his voice strained and awkward. Someone had been calling him nonstop, accusing me of running some kind of illegal business out of my apartment. They'd gone so far as to file official complaints with the housing board, claiming I was violating noise ordinances, that there were too many visitors, and that I was operating a commercial venture in a residential space. It was complete nonsense. But still, the complaints triggered a mandatory inspection. I had to scramble for days, pulling together paperwork to show I worked from a legitimate office, not from home. Thankfully, my neighbors stepped up and wrote statements confirming I was quiet, respectful, and rarely had visitors. The inspector found nothing out of place, of course. But defending myself against these made-up accusations wore me down. And just when I thought things might settle, the chaos spilled into my job. Suddenly, anonymous complaints started flooding into HR, claims about me being unprofessional, unethical, untrustworthy. Each one sparked an investigation, which meant hours of paperwork, interviews, and stressful meetings. My boss kept backing me, but I could see the fatigue in his eyes. I knew he was wondering how long he could keep defending me before I became more of a liability than an asset. Then one morning, I showed up to work and noticed something odd. My desk drawer was cracked open, just slightly. Nothing seemed to be missing, but something felt off. I started taking photos of my desk every night before heading home, just to cover my bases. 3 days later, I came in and found several confidential client files sitting right there on my desk. Files I'd never seen before. I hadn't touched them. I hadn't requested them. Somehow, someone had planted them there. Even worse? The security cameras had mysteriously glitched during those exact hours. IT couldn't explain it. No footage. No way to prove I hadn't done it. If it weren't for my spotless record and the faith my boss still had in me, I probably would have been suspended, or worse. That's when Jenna really started noticing how on edge I'd become. She began walking me to my car every evening, casually checking under it while I pretended to fumble for my keys. We came up with a little code system, short texts to confirm we each made it home safely. Meanwhile, her dad quietly reached out to some of his contacts, letting them know that false reports about me might be coming their way. The mind games only escalated from there. I'd walk out to find my car tires mysteriously flat, not slashed, just drained of air. Random magazine subscriptions started showing up with my name on them, subscriptions I'd never ordered. My mail would vanish for days, then reappear suddenly, crammed into my mailbox all at once. Food deliveries I didn't place started showing up at all hours. Nothing dangerous, just unsettling. Just enough to keep me rattled. Each event by itself was too minor for police involvement, too shadowy to track. But altogether? It was psychological torture. I installed cameras, changed my locks, started switching up my routines. I became hyper-alert, checking mirrors constantly, saving every receipt, screenshotting every strange email or message. It felt like I was living in a thriller I never asked to be part of. Then she took it online. Fake profiles popped up on networking sites, with my name spelled slightly wrong, just enough to look legit at a glance. These accounts started posting inflammatory content, leaving weird comments on professional forums, even sending bizarre connection requests to people I worked with. I'd spend hours reporting them, getting them taken down, only for new ones to appear a few days later. She made the scholarship fund her next target. Created copycat websites with nearly identical names that redirected donors to broken links or dead pages. Posted fake reviews accusing the fund of being a scam. Claimed I was stealing money. Even worse, she contacted families of the students we'd helped, telling them their kids were being exploited, that I was using their stories for my own gain. One of the mothers called me sobbing. She'd received an anonymous letter full of lies about me, stuff about criminal records, mental instability, even forged documents made to look like official records. I spent hours on the phone with her, walking her through everything, sending court documents, sharing the truth. Rebuilding that trust was painful, but necessary. And then, she came for Mrs. Ellis. My old teacher called me, her voice trembling. Someone had reported her to the school board for misconduct, accusing her of accepting bribes, faking my grades, writing fraudulent recommendations. Mrs. Ellis was just a few years away from retirement. Even though the investigation cleared her, it still left a cloud over her career. Seeing her, a woman who had only ever shown me kindness, put through all that because of my mother's hate. That broke something in me. I drove to her house with flowers and apologies. She just hugged me and said she'd do it all over again if it meant helping me. And she wasn't the only one caught in the crossfire. Mr. Rivera started getting phone calls at home, his unlisted home number. Some fake reporter claimed he was digging into an old grade-fixing scandal. Jenna's dad got anonymous tips accusing him of favoritism in college admissions. Each one of them stood by me. But I could see the damage. The stress. The quiet toll it was taking on their lives. My mom wasn't just coming after me anymore, she was punishing everyone who had the nerve to support me. The guilt weighed heavy on me. I might have broken free from her control, but she was still reaching into my life, burning everything she could touch. So I did what I could. I started logging everything. Every incident. Every detail. I built a massive spreadsheet, dates, times, descriptions, supporting evidence, whatever I could find. Dozens of pages long. And eventually I saw patterns. Her attacks always flared up when something good happened, when I got a promotion, or when the scholarship hit a milestone. Her sabotage wasn't random. It was strategic. That's when my cousin Sarah stepped back into the picture. She'd been the one to warn me early on about the smear campaign. But now, she'd had enough. She started documenting everything, recording my mother's phone calls. Conversations where my mom ranted about teaching me a lesson. About putting me back in my place. Those recordings showed just how far gone she was. She spent hours a day scheming, pulling distant relatives into her drama, painting me as the unstable one, spinning tales of betrayal and disrespect. She'd even hired a private investigator to track me. But the guy must have had a conscience, because after a while, he quit. Said he didn't want to be part of what she was asking him to do. He reached out to me through Sarah, wanting to make things right. He gave me everything he had, photos of my apartment, notes on my daily routine, even audio recordings of my mom asking him to plant fake evidence. To get me fired. To ruin my life. With all of that in hand, I finally had to stop and ask myself, what now? Restraining orders had failed me before. But maybe this time, with solid proof, she wouldn't be able to slip away again. HR cleared me after every investigation, but it still chipped away at my credibility. And the police? Their hands were tied. The harassment was just calculated enough to stay on the right side of the law. I knew I needed a new strategy. So I started using my mother's own methods against her. I began documenting her life just like she'd done to mine. Public records painted a picture she didn't want anyone to see. Her finances were a mess. She was spending money she didn't have to keep up appearances. Turns out, her university had quietly cut back her teaching schedule after students filed complaints about her erratic behavior. I didn't attack her outright. Instead, I just told the truth. Whenever someone asked why I didn't speak to my mother anymore, I didn't dodge. I showed them the court documents from our mediation. When donors raised concerns about the scholarship fund, I opened the books. Full financial transparency. Audit reports. Everything. When my coworkers got those anonymous messages trying to smear me, I beat my mother to the punch. I shared my full story, including the sabotage she'd been pulling behind the scenes. I made transparency my weapon. Then I went a step further. I built a website that laid it all out, my whole journey, every piece of evidence I'd collected over the years. I even posted the audio from our mediation, where my mother straight up admitted to tanking my college applications. I shared screenshots, emails, letters, even pictures of the intercepted mail and the court ruling in my favor. That website caught fire. Especially in academic circles. Students who'd been through similar experiences started reaching out with stories of their own. Donations to the scholarship fund surged. Turns out, there are a lot of people out there who know exactly how it feels to be sabotaged by the one person who should have been your biggest cheerleader. I started getting media requests left and right. Most of them I turned down. I wasn't trying to be famous, I just wanted peace. Of course, my mother responded the only way she knew how, with more rage. She hit me with lawsuits. Defamation. Harassment. Emotional distress. But truth has a funny way of holding up in court. Every single thing I'd said was backed with proof. The lawsuits crumbled one by one, and each dismissal became another brick in the wall of her public record. She kept trying to pull the family to her side. Through dinner parties where she'd cry and rant about her ungrateful daughter, ruining her life. But the family was waking up. They started comparing stories, connecting dots. They realized how many lies she told over the years, how she'd turned relatives against each other just to keep herself in control. And then my aunt, the one whose dream of becoming a doctor my mom crushed decades ago, stepped forward. She became one of my strongest allies. She shared her own story, how my mother had sabotaged her path too. For years, she'd kept quiet to keep the family peace. But seeing me go through the same thing cracked something open in her. She was done staying silent. Together, we uncovered more. A cousin's art school portfolio? Gone mysteriously missing. A nephew? Lost a job offer after someone sent an anonymous, character warning, to his future employer. One by one, the pieces fit together, revealing my mother's obsession with being the only one in the family who succeeded. Anyone who stepped out of line, or dared to shine brighter, got clipped down. Still, even with all that chaos swirling, the scholarship fund was getting ready to celebrate its second anniversary. And I wasn't going to let her ruin it. Not this time. We went all out, secured a real venue, tight contracts, and backup plans for anything that might go sideways. And then, about a week before the big event, I got a call I wasn't expecting. It was a woman named Dr. Victoria Chin, a psychiatrist who specialized in narcissistic personality disorder. She'd been following my story and reached out to offer her services. Not for therapy, but to be an expert witness, in case I ever needed to show a psychological pattern behind what my mother was doing. Her insight was eye-opening. She explained that my academic success threatened my mom's identity. My independence challenged her need for control. Every attack was her trying to drag me back under, so she could prove she was still the smartest, the most successful one in the room. Knowing the why didn't excuse the pain, but it helped me predict what was coming. Dr. Chen warned me that my mother would escalate before the gala. That she might go after people close to me, maybe dig into my dating history or try to wedge herself into my inner circle. She was right. My mother started reaching out to people I dated in college, spinning stories about how unstable I was. She slid into the DMs of professional contacts, painting herself as the victim of my vendetta. She even tried to sneak into the scholarship's volunteer base, signing up under fake names, hoping to get access to donor information. We caught every attempt. But keeping her out took time and energy I barely had. I developed insomnia. I was constantly on edge, second-guessing every phone call, every email, waiting for the next grenade to land. Jenna started staying over more often. At first just to keep me company, but eventually to be a witness, in case anything went down at night. 3 days before the gala, my mother dropped what she thought would be her knockout punch. She filed a report with the IRS, accusing the scholarship fund of tax fraud. Claimed I was stealing money, hiding income, all of it. The complaint triggered an automatic review. Our accounts were at risk of being frozen, right before the biggest event of the year. But I had kept meticulous records from day one. Partly because I'm careful by nature, but mostly because I knew she'd try something like this. Every dollar was accounted for. Every donation tracked. Every form submitted exactly as it should be. Our accountant, a volunteer who'd been deeply moved by the fund's mission, worked through the night to gather and send everything the IRS needed. They cleared us in 48 hours. Even faster than normal, because our records were so solid. The IRS agent even complimented us on how clean and organized everything was. But the damage had been done. Even though we passed the review, the emotional toll nearly broke me. I sat in my car the night before the gala, parked outside the venue, completely drained. 5 years of fighting. 5 years of defending myself against my own mother, the one person who should have been in my corner from the start. And in that moment, all the pain, the fear, the exhaustion, it finally caught up with me. I broke down and called Jenna, just sobbing, ready to throw in the towel. She showed up within minutes, and she wasn't alone. Mrs. Ellis and Mr. Rivera came with her. They'd been helping set up for the gala when Jenna called them. The three of them sat with me and reminded me why I'd started the scholarship in the first place. It wasn't to get revenge. It wasn't about proving anything to my mother. It was about giving students like me a real chance, students who'd been knocked down by the very people who were supposed to lift them up. If I gave up now, I'd be letting all of them down. The morning of the gala, just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, we hit another crisis. My mother had called the venue and reported a bomb threat. The whole building went on lockdown while police brought in dogs to sweep every corner. We stood outside in the parking lot, watching it all unfold. Everyone knew who made the call, but of course, we had no proof. Thankfully, 2 hours before the event, the police gave us the all clear. And then something amazing happened. We all jumped in to make it work. Donors, recipients, volunteers, everyone worked side by side to get the place ready in time. In a strange twist, my mother's attempt to destroy the day ended up making it even more meaningful. One donor who owned a catering business sent trucks of food when he heard what happened. Another guest's mom, she was a florist, showed up with beautiful flower arrangements she'd put together overnight. While we were setting up, my phone rang. Unknown number. I shouldn't have answered, but I did. It was a local reporter. He told me he'd gotten a tip about shady finances tied to my scholarship. Turns out, my mother had sent him fake documents, phony transfers to offshore accounts, trying to make it look like I was stealing donations. He asked for a comment before airing the story. I didn't hesitate. I invited him to the gala. Told him to bring his camera crew, talk to the students, and take a good look at our financial records. I'd gotten used to being transparent. At this point, it was second nature. He showed up skeptical. But by the time he left, he had a very different story than the one he'd planned. The event went on without any major drama. Although, I did notice a few unfamiliar faces, people snapping photos, quietly taking notes. Probably private investigators, hired by my mother, hoping to dig up something to use against me. So I made sure they had a clear view, donation records posted on the walls, thank you letters from students, full audit reports laid out for anyone who wanted to see them. Later that night, Sarah called in a panic. She'd been at my mother's house when the investigators came back empty-handed. Apparently, my mother lost it. Threw things. Screamed about ungrateful children. And then she revealed her next move. She was planning to track down my biological father. I hadn't seen him since I was 3. My mom always told me he walked out on us. Turns out, she pushed him away, threatened him, made sure he disappeared. Now, decades later, she wanted to bring him into her war against me. That was the last straw. I hired my own investigator that same night, determined to find him first. Within a week, we had a lead. He was living 2 states away. He'd remarried, had a family, and built a quiet life. My investigator reached out, explained the situation, and warned him he might be hearing from my mother soon. What I didn't expect was his response. He wanted to meet. He told me he'd tried to stay in touch when I was little, but my mother made it impossible. She threatened to ruin his life if he didn't leave. Still, he'd followed my journey from a distance, collected newspaper clippings, watched my career unfold from afar. He'd been proud of me the whole time. We met halfway at a small coffee shop. He brought pictures, letters he'd written but never mailed, birthday cards he'd bought for every year he missed. He told me about the child support he tried to pay, money my mother rejected because she didn't want him to have any visitation rights. He'd saved that money in a separate account, hoping to give it to me someday. Someone snapped a photo of us at the coffee shop and posted it online. My mother saw it. Her reaction was worse than ever. She called his employer, his wife, his kids, spread lies about him, painted him as some dangerous man from her past. Then she filed a restraining order against him, claiming he was stalking her, even though he lived hundreds of miles away. But he was ready this time. He recorded everything, every call, every message. His wife, a lawyer, helped him press charges for harassment. And his children, my half-siblings, stood by him. They went public, calling out my mother's lies. The family rift that had been simmering for years finally split wide open. Even my grandmother, who had always defended my mother, finally admitted the truth. She said she'd created this. That my mother had been like this since childhood, always sabotaging, always manipulating, always needing to be the best no matter who she hurt. And that was the final push. The university couldn't ignore it anymore. With everything coming out, media coverage, court records, student complaints, they approached my mother with a deal: take early retirement quietly with a modest package. She refused. Demanded full pension. Threatened to sue. So they pushed back. The university had been keeping records. Years of complaints from students. Stories of favoritism, of punishing students who outshined her, of abusing her position to dig up personal info about me. They gave her an ultimatum: retire quietly or face a formal termination with cause. She chose to fight. And the hearings were public. Students came forward, one after another. They shared how she'd docked grades out of spite, blocked recommendation letters, sabotaged grad school applications. It was the same playbook she'd used on me. While all of that unfolded, the scholarship fund kept growing. We'd already helped dozens of students escape toxic homes and find their footing in higher education. Even with my mother trying to tank everything, media interest had only helped spread the word. More donations rolled in. Companies offered sponsorships. One night, I was at home reviewing new applications when the fire alarm went off. We evacuated to the parking lot. Firefighters found smoke bombs in the stairwell. No fire, just enough smoke to clear the building. Security footage caught a hooded figure slipping out. Face covered. But I recognized the build. The way they moved. The next morning, the police confirmed it. They arrested my mother for filing a false report and causing a public disturbance. One of the neighbors had a dash cam that caught her license plate leaving the scene. That finally gave the police something concrete. She had crossed a line the law couldn't ignore anymore. The judge reviewed her long history of false reports and harassment, set her bail high, and issued a strict order to keep her away from me and my home. But she didn't care. Just a few days later, I walked into the lobby of my apartment building and found her there, telling anyone who'd listen that I was mentally unstable and needed help. Security kept her contained until the police showed up again. She was arrested on the spot. This time, the judge denied bail completely, saying she was a threat while awaiting trial. Her lawyer, a family friend who'd known us both for years, came to me quietly. He looked worn out. He admitted she wouldn't listen to reason. He had seen all the evidence and knew how bad it looked, but she refused any plea deal. She was still convinced she could spin the jury into seeing her as the real victim. The trial was coming. I dreaded it, but I knew deep down it had to happen. Thankfully, I wasn't alone. My support system showed up strong. Jenna took time off work and sat in that courtroom every single day. Mrs. Ellis and Mr. Rivera agreed to speak on my behalf. My dad flew in with his family. Scholarship recipients packed the gallery. And then it happened. My mother took the stand. And she unraveled. She didn't hold back. She went on and on about how ungrateful I was, how I had ruined her life just by succeeding without her help. She even admitted to calling the colleges, but claimed she was just protecting schools from an unstable child. She said the whole scholarship fund existed just to humiliate her. The prosecutor barely had to say a word. Her arrogance took care of everything. She contradicted herself, admitted to things while trying to justify them, and showed zero remorse. The jury didn't buy any of it. They saw straight through the act. She was found guilty on all charges: harassment, false reporting, trespassing, violating restraining orders. At sentencing, the judge laid it all out: how long this had gone on, the damage it had done, the toll it had taken on public resources. He sentenced her to 2 years in prison, along with mandatory psychological evaluation and treatment. She'd have to serve at least 8 months before even being considered for parole. As the officers led her away, she turned back and looked at me. For just a split second, I saw something in her eyes. Regret, maybe? Or just the weight of finally losing. But it was gone as fast as it came, replaced with the same rage I'd seen 1,000 times. She screamed at me that I'd regret this. Said I was nothing without her. That I'd destroyed our family. After the courtroom cleared, people hugged me and told me justice had been served. But I didn't feel triumphant. It didn't feel like a win. It just felt like the end of something long and painful. And even with her behind bars, I knew in her mind, she'd always be the victim. Time moved on. The scholarship fund became an official nonprofit. We opened a real office, hired a staff, and expanded our reach to help even more students. My dad and I kept working on our relationship. We couldn't get back the years we'd lost, but we could build something new, one day at a time. My mother's release date came up sooner than I'd expected. They said it was for good behavior. But I figured she'd just learn how to hide her true self better. Her lawyer reached out. She'd lost her house paying for legal fees, and her pension wasn't much. She needed help. So I had my lawyer set up a trust. It would cover a small apartment and her basic needs, but she wouldn't have direct access to any of the money. And more importantly, she'd have no contact with me. It wasn't for her. It was for my own peace of mind. A way to make sure I didn't become like her. She sent one letter after she got out, through her lawyer. It was short and formal, totally unlike her usual rambling, manipulative notes. She thanked me for the financial support and said she'd respect my boundaries. She mentioned therapy. Said she was trying to understand her behavior. I didn't write back. Every now and then, I'd hear something about her through the family grapevine. Word was, she joined a support group. Volunteered at a local library. Kept mostly to herself. Some relatives tried to convince me to reconcile with her, but I stayed firm. Forgiving someone doesn't mean you have to let them back into your life. I could wish her well, from a distance, and still protect the life I'd fought to build. 5 years after I started the fund, we held our biggest gala yet. Hundreds of people came. Some of the scholarship recipients had already graduated and were now giving back. My dad gave a speech about resilience and breaking toxic cycles. Mrs. Ellis announced a new scholarship in her name, for aspiring teachers. That night, I stepped out onto the balcony, looking out at the city lit up below. Jenna joined me. A few of the recipients stood nearby, people who had become like family to me. We'd all survived things that could have broken us. But somehow, we turned all that pain into something good. Into purpose. Into a community. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from an unknown number. I almost ignored it. But then I saw the area code. It was from where I grew up. It said, "Saw the gala coverage. You did good. I'm sorry." I stared at it for a moment, then deleted it and turned off my phone. The next morning, new applications came in. More young people, more stories of being sabotaged or held back by the very people who were supposed to protect them. My team and I went through them carefully, remembering our own journeys as we did. We chose 20 new students to support, not just with money, but with mentorship, and with a community that believed in them. My life had found its rhythm. The work fulfilled me. The fun gave me purpose. And I'd built a new kind of family, made up of survivors, just like me. Eventually, love found its way in too. With someone who understood my past, respected my boundaries, and showed up with actions instead of just words. I kept the website up, sharing my story. Every now and then I'd update it. Students from all over the world wrote in to say it had helped them. Some found the courage to leave toxic homes. Some held on until they could. Some even healed relationships that had changed for the better. Every path mattered. And the anger that used to live so close to the surface? It didn't visit much anymore. When it did, I used it. I poured it into advocacy, pushing for stronger university policies around parental interference, training counselors to spot patterns of academic sabotage. That scared girl who once fled in silence had grown into a woman who helped others find their own exits. My mother stayed away, just like she promised. Whether she'd really changed or was just avoiding consequences, I didn't care. Her presence had finally faded from my everyday life. And the space she once filled with chaos was now full of peace. At 30, I graduated from law school. I built the stability that made it possible, and I'd done it on my terms. My father attended, along with the extended family I'd chosen. The girl with a 4.2 GPA who couldn't get into college now had her law degree from a respected school. The scholarship fund evolved into a full advocacy organization. We published resources, lobbied for policy changes, created support networks. What started as transformation of personal pain had become a movement helping thousands recognize and escape educational sabotage. My story became a case study in psychology programs, examining narcissistic abuse and family dynamics. Dr. Chen co-authored papers with me about recognizing parental sabotage patterns. We developed screening tools for counselors and admission officers to identify suspicious interference. Years later, I received word that my mother had passed. A heart attack. Sudden, but not entirely unexpected given her lifestyle. I attended the funeral from the back, leaving before the reception. Some family members understood, others judged. I'd made peace with both reactions long ago. She'd left me everything in her will to everyone's surprise. The house, her remaining assets, even her academic papers. I donated it all to the fund, using the house as a transitional shelter for students escaping abusive situations. Her legacy became supporting those she would have sabotaged. I often think about the girl who discovered her mother's betrayal in a coworker's office. She couldn't have imagined where that revelation would lead. The pain had been real. The journey difficult. But the outcome had meaning beyond personal vindication. The fund now operates nationally, with chapters in 12 states. We've helped over 1,000 students, some escaping situations far worse than mine. Each success story validates the pain of the journey. Each grateful message reminds me why I chose transformation over bitterness. My office walls display photos from graduations, weddings, achievements of those we've helped. Mixed among them are pictures with my chosen family, my father, the mentors who believed in me. The wall tells a story of resilience, community, and the family we create when blood fails us. Sometimes new recipients ask how I moved past the anger. I tell them I didn't. Not entirely. I just learned to point it somewhere useful. The rage that once consumed me now fuels a program that changes lives. My mother tried to destroy my future. Instead, she inadvertently created hundreds of better ones.